Good afternoon, Ziba. It's so good to see you. How's your Sunday going?
It's going good actually. I had my coffee. I answered my emails. I entered my students' grade for their midterm, and yeah, I'm here with you. So,
That's
how was
amazing.
your Sunday going?
My Sunday is good. I wish it has would have been as productive as yours sounds like, but I got to go out of the house. I love playing with my tripod and taking photos in different outfits. So on Sundays I usually find a new spot and take some photos, and so I got to do that, which gives me energy for the new week and some creative juices flowing. So I'm thankful. But I love you mentioned too the coffee. I'm a big hot chocolate on the weekends kind of person.
Oh,
I have quite a sweet tooth, and so I had my hot chocolate earlier, and now I'm so thankful to be here with you. I can't believe it was your exhibit had been wrapping up at Crystal Bridges when we were
mhm.
speaking. We're now a few weeks past that in like almost peak autumn. We were just talking about how the weather's getting cooler and we're looking forward to that. I'm curious, what about fall do you really enjoy, Ziva?
What about fall?
Yep, and autumn this season.
So I think colors. Yeah. So I'm a visual artist and I'm a big fan of colors. I mean, in my work, color is um like the essential element that I use. So autumn is uh, a very like magical season for me. Like seeing
Yes.
colors changing every day. So that's really interesting for me. My studio is in Mount Sequoia. There is a tree that I always park behind that. So it kind of comes and like covers a part of the parking lot, and they keep taking picture of one of its branches and recording the change of color.
Uh,
So yeah, I really like change of colors in other. Mhm.
yeah, that's so beautiful. And I think magical is such a perfect word for it. There's a tree outside of my window too that I do the same thing. And I love all the changes of color, but I'm like, what day am I going to wake up and there's no leaves left? And then I get a little worried about that. But I try to just stay in the moment of enjoying those colors that are changing and not thinking about when they're all going to fall off. So I love the idea of photographing it too. You might have inspired me for a new project. But without further ado, I want to introduce you properly. This is Ziba Rajabi, visual artist extraordinaire. I'm so excited to learn more about you and your work. And Ziba, I'd love to start at the beginning. What was life like for Ziba as a kid? Where were you growing up? What were you doing? And when did you start to care about like art and your more creative pursuits?
So I was born and raised in Tehran, Iran for like uh, 29 years before moving to States in Fayetteville. So I think it was just a normal like childhood thing, but I remember that I always wanted to uh, make like an interruption in normal life, and like making art was one of them. And yeah. So what was the second part of your question? It was
Yeah.
about
So
how I
it was just kind of like, well, when did you like start more intentionally maybe pursuing art? Or I love that the wording you use of like making an interruption in life through
yeah.
creative practice. As a kid, were you, tempted to paint on the walls? Like, were you rambunctious in some way? Like, I just wanted to understand a little bit more about how you expressed your creativity growing up.
Yeah, like continuing about that interruption in the normal life. When I was a kid, I thought I'm going to become a witch when I grow up, because I was like, yeah, that's the way you can use magic and like create the things that you don't have in or everyday life, and like all those magical power that you can have. And when I grew up, when I was like teenager, I learned that it's not actually possible because there's not enough education about that. There's no school, there is no like a university. How do you want to learn magic? So, and then I decided to create my own reality. So and that was the time that I would write a lot. So I would like keep writing and writing and writing and recording everything by writing. And that was the time that I thought, so it seems that I'm going to become a writer when I grow up. And then I grew up. In Iran, you can choose what to study in high school. You can choose between art, science, mathematics, and something else. Like choose your major and which major do you want to like study specifically. So I chose to go to a art high school, and I went there. I studied graphic design. It was like the closest thing to what I wanted. So I studied graphic design. I graduated from high school with a degree in graphic design, and then I went to college and studied graphic design again. And after 2 years, I started working as a full-time graphic designer. So in my first few months of my work as a graphic designer, I realized that this is not what I want to do. I want to be a painter. So I applied to school and got another degree in painting, like yeah, BFA in painting.
Wow.
And yeah, at the same time, I was working as a graphic designer and like studying painting and working as a painting as well. And like these two paths had overlap for like many years. And then I went to another school, applied for the Master of Fine Arts. I started my Master in Fine Arts in Tehran. But after a few semesters, I was like, this is not really what I want to do. So I quit and I applied for the University of Arkansas Master of Fine Arts, and now I'm here. So
What a cool journey. And I'm always encouraged when people explain that, like, by pursuing something, they realize what they really want, even if it's not the thing they're pursuing. I think just like getting our feet wet, trying something can sometimes maybe be more helpful than just standing still and waiting to know for certain what the thing is that we want to do. When you were doing graphic design, was it freelance or was it for one specific organization?
No, I was working like a full time for a company as a graphic designer. And yeah, like graphic design was something super serious in my like artistic career. And also I love design. I mean, now I'm a painter and like visual artist, and I work with fabrics, installation, and all those things. But I can see like the way that I approach all these things is based on design, and it comes from my experience in design. And sometimes I really like miss design environment. And yeah, I mean, I still don't know which one is what I like more. And I even don't know if these two are different or not. So yeah.
There's some overlapping skill sets, it sounds like, or transferable knowledge, which is really cool. You know, if someone has been studying just painting their whole life, you bring such a different breadth of knowledge or, you know, thinking process to the canvas versus them, which is just really interesting. I'm curious about those points where you decided to make a change, like when you decided you wanted to go back to school and get a degree in painting. You had been doing graphic design in high school and in college. Like, did you just wake up one day and painting was the future for you, or had you been like hobbying in painting while you were working in graphic design? What made you make that decision?
So you mentioned a very interesting point. There is a lot of like overlap between design and fine arts, and especially graphic design and painting. So many of first graphic designs that we have in art history and history of graphic design, they come from the background of painting. Even in Tehran, those masters of graphic design that we have, they came from a background in painting. So I don't see them that much different, but there are also some differences. So when I was in high school or even in college, we had courses like illustration, we had courses like drawing, and we would work with paint and color and drawing, like observational drawing and like a lot of different things. And I was also very interested in art history. And I remember that all my time in college, like between all my classes, for example, I had a class in like 10 a.m. and I had another class in like 5 p.m. Between my classes, like all these hours, I would spend my time in libraries looking at like books about painting, about architecture, design, about like a lot of different things, and or like spending my time surfing internet and just seeing different examples of art and design. And I think all this like exploration and all this like playing with materials, all the freedom that I thought painting can give me, they all came from these times that I spent like looking at this work, like masterpieces, and also kind of experimenting, illustration, like drawing, like painting, and all those things. Yeah.
Such a cool marriage of different experiences. And I think what's so powerful in your experience is that you're using your downtime to explore your like passion, to like reconcile your interest in these different spaces. Like our classroom experience is so important, I think, and I'm sure you maybe feel that way as an instructor, as a professor, but also what we do with our time outside of the classroom to explore who we are and like how we want to use that knowledge is such a cool way to come into who we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to do. So thank you for explaining what that was like for you. I would love to also understand more about, your style and your approach to your work. So I understand from like reading your website and speaking with you that right now your work tries to like reconcile these two different spaces that you have occupied of Tehran and in Arkansas. But how did that become, your primary focus? I imagine that couldn't have happened before you moved to Arkansas. Like, were you working on different stuff before then? I'm excited to know that journey.
Yeah, that's a good question. So let me go a little bit back.
Yeah.
To explain where it comes. In my paintings, I always was interested in exploring space. It doesn't matter if it was like a psychological space or a physical space, a space as vast as like astronomical scale, or space as like tiny as my own room. So some of my paintings was also depiction of this interest. So I used to use images that like a Hubble satellite started to sending. I mean, they captured it over years. But when I was in the first semester of my BFA slash painting program. It was the time that Hubble released all those high quality images of galaxy and space that they had. So I was exploring that and like making some abstract drawings and paintings. And I experimented painting and drawing from observational, but that was just to learn how to do that. That was not something that I was interested in working with. So, and that means everything that I made in my work was something that I didn't have. I mean, it was not based on my everyday touchable or tactile experience. Mm-hmm. It was always something more imaginative, or those kind of experiences that I would make for myself to interrupt what is around me. So I started from that, and then I explored those kind of spaces. And when I was making those paintings, I realized that I really like making spaces that I don't see in my paintings. So, or I don't see like from observational based on in my paintings. And a side note, I lived in Tehran like my whole life, and Tehran is like a mega city, like 12 million population in day. And my everyday encounter with the space around myself, with my surrounding, was concrete, was cement. Tehran really suffers from air pollution. Mm-hmm. Like very like skyscraper kind of buildings, not that much natural scenery, not that much like trees or plants around. There are some trees or plants, but they are all always controlled by humans. So this is something that you decorate your surrounding with. So I started painting landscape, like imaginary landscapes. And I would have some references from art history or those kind of places, but it was always some imaginary thing, not something that I've ever experienced from firsthand observation. So that series of imaginative landscapes were what I applied to, University of Arkansas. I used those to apply for I used those for my portfolio for my grad school application. Mm-hmm. I came here in Arkansas, Fayetteville. Arkansas is known for its national scenery. So all those things that I've been painting from my imagination was something that I would always see when I was here. Campus is like beautiful, full of like trees, flowers, and everything. Yes. I just needed to look outside of my window, like my bedroom window, and I would see like a lot of greeneries. So after a while, I started with the same kind of painting here, but after a while, it really didn't make sense because it was exactly the same thing that I was seeing, and it didn't make sense for me to keep doing that. And then that was the point that I started recognizing all the similarities and differences that I'm experiencing with the surrounding again. And this time surrounding was not only cement or like concrete versus tree. It was like my culture things that I brought with myself
Mhm.
and the culture that I came into. It was about how I look. I used to look normal. I mean, like my black hairs, like my color skin, like my skin color and everything used to look normal. But now here I'm different. How I talk, like my English is broken. And even if I learned how to speak better and better English, but it's still not my mother tongue. It's still, I mean, it is not still comfortable for me to articulate what I exactly think in a way that I used to. And worse than that was that, like worse than all of these things was that my sense of humor didn't make sense anymore.
No.
So, I mean, yeah, I used to play with words and make a funny situation out of them, and people would laugh. And my friends used to think I'm a like funny person. But here, if I wanted to do any of those things, people would think that it's because I don't know the language. And they wouldn't get that it was supposed to be funny. So yeah, I mean, these things made me to think about all the differences and familiarities. And after a while, I tried to reconcile my relationship with where I come from, what I brought with myself, and where I am now, and what I have here now. So all these works that I started making from that point in my MFA program came from here. So
That's such a cool journey. Thank you for explaining it. And I think that that anecdote about, telling jokes in a different language and a different culture is so it makes sense, but it's so mind blowing. Like I hadn't thought about it before. So I appreciate you explaining what that friction is like, where you have something that you enjoy doing and you enjoy being known for. And when you show up in a new space, you also show up with that in a different way. But I'm going to backtrack a little in what you were saying. It really interested me how you mentioned this passion for work about like spaces, and also how you balance that with this interest in disrupting or interrupting spaces. Like, what does that do for you, or what do you hope that that does for the audience? Is it about, like, I remember you mentioning, the concrete and wanting people to see the landscape. Is it with a hope that they see different option or something different than that? Like, I would love to know more about that intention.
So that's a really good question. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure if they exactly see what I see, but I always make my work in a way that people with different level of information about what I'm doing can pick something from the work and like understand some part of it. And I didn't used to, but these days I really think about audiences, and I try actively to put something there for people to get it, because I think I like my work to be approachable by like all the people, or at least like many people, not only for people who know me or only for people who come from a background in art and history and can understand those things. No, I try to make something that most of the people can find something there to enjoy. About the disruption, I would like to bring an example to just explain what I mean about that. So in my Recent installation in crystal bridges, there was like different layers of information, and I was not expected everyone can understand like all these layers. Simply because some visuals or some meanings that I put in those works needed a little bit more background. But at the same time, I used color as an element that everyone can feel without really having knowledge of color or like where this color comes from and all those things. So its a natural impact on people was something that I used in my installation to create, to activate the space and create a situation in which people like can enjoy the work and at least approach them. And for example, in this specific one, I used color of red. So red is a very unique color. It's very powerful. It's very strong. It's very emotional. It's happy. And at the same time, it can be angry. It's like very, I mean, it has a lot of different contrasting quality at the same time in itself. So, and I used red to activate space because it can do that. But red itself couldn't do that. So I added blue as another element to activate red. So tension between red and blue could create that atmosphere that I wanted to have in the installation. So many people came the first time that they entered the space, they would be impacted by color because like it was a specific thing there, and color could have that impact. And then there was some like letters and writings in Persian language on the wall. I didn't really expect all the people could read those things, but they knew that it is from a language that we don't know. Or some of them even knew. Some of them would come and say, hey, is this Persian? Or some people would come and say, hey, is this Arabic? That was true because we share the same letters and like alphabet, even if the language is totally different. And that was enough for me because it would show that it is a language on the wall. Or people would come and look at the installation and say, I found a door, I found a gate. Oh, there is 3 windows over there. So the fact that they would recognize that these elements are architectural features was also enough. Putting all these elements together, you could create the actual story that was behind the installation, considering that it is made by a textile and it is made by small squares. And also there was like explanatory text on the wall as well. So by like explaining all these details, I just wanted to say that I still and very much care about what audiences can take from my work. And I would consider that I come from a background that is different with where I am now, but I still have some experience living here. And I have something to share with both people. I mean, people from my home country and from the same background, and people from my new background, which is like living in States, living in South, living in Fayetteville, in Arkansas, like all those things. So this is how I try to connect these things together. And also I hope that I can convey this information to audiences.
That's such a beautiful pursuit and idea. And I think, in social work, we talk about persons in the environment. So as a person existing anywhere, our environment is something that matters to how we exist. And also we are shaped by those environments, and those environments are shaped by us. So your being in Arkansas and your before that being in Tehran influences, who you are and how you show up. And likewise influences Arkansas and Tehran because you've been in them. So that's really cool how that space comes up in your work, which I will put on the screen now so we can look more closely at some of your specific projects. So this first work and the next one are part of your MFA thesis. Is that right?
Right.
And that was called When They Sing a Song of Joy with Sorrow. I'm really interested in learning more about the naming of the series and this piece and the story behind it.
That's a good question. So I was talking with one of my friends, like one of my artist friends, a few days ago, and we were talking about how our culture is based on a literature. So even if we make like visual arts, there is a story behind that, or it is directly influenced by a literature or language itself, like how we write language and handwriting and like letters and alphabet and all those things. And so, I mean, even if I make a work that looks abstract, it is based on some narrative and or some poetry. So that title comes from my own experience, actually. I thought, I mean, it is related to where I come from and like the history that we had, like all the revolutions and wars and everything that we experienced. And I would always see, I mean, it is something that we even make fun of it and we like talk about it. And it is that we have a lot of like songs, like especially pop songs, but not for a specific time, like pop songs from like 8 years ago until now, that it talks about a very sad like content. It has a really sad content. It talks about very sad story, but it sings it very, very happy. I mean, people are dancing with that, and the person in the person who is like talking its own story in the song is talking about like how miserable they feel or their lover left them and all those things, and we dance with all those things. So on the other side, there is always some sorrow behind. I mean, even right now, even I'm always thinking that we may never be able to be like fully 100% happy because we have experienced things that has impact on us forever. And it's not, it might not be things that happened when I was alive. It's something that happened in a history that it is related to me by a lot of factors. I mean, so it talks about those kind of condition and those kind of experiences. And I wanted to play with this like context, vice versa, that we used to use different contexts with different music, and I used it in this title of this show, and I hope I could explain it in a way that I felt about that. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that was so cool. Thank you. I mean, that's just really interesting and so insightful to recognize that things that didn't happen in our lifetime still impact our lives. We think about that a lot in the social work world too. We call that the Chrono System, how like chronological, like things that happened, before we existed still shape how we show up today and the sorrow that we might carry. So how does that show up in this piece? What is, and maybe can you say the name of it? Cause I don't want to mess it up.
That's Torange.
Torange. Okay.
Yeah. A Torange means sour orange, I guess. So Torange is a specific like citrus. It smells so good. It has its own taste. It's a little bit bitter, but the way that it's bitter, it's not like annoying. It's a specific, unique taste that it has. But it is not about fruit. Again, in our literature, specifically in poetry, our like poet, like Iranian poet, tend to talk about things indirectly and using some elements, usually natural elements, as the metaphor. So for example, Torange in this specific poetry that I used for this, that I inspired by for this work, was the poet's lover. So they would use, they would call them Torange in their poetry. And this work is specifically about that poetry. And the work itself is about a conversation between the lover and the beloved ones. And it seems that it was actually a one-side love, but it is very common in Iranian literature. But yeah, this is about that one. But and it's a very beautiful poetry. But the reason that I made an art piece about that work is not that poetry itself. There was a singer and musician that I used to listen to his work a lot, but unfortunately these days there are some things around him that like there is some documents that he's been accused for sexual assault and all those things. And I wanted to mention this now because when I made this work, we didn't know anything about these things that happened. Otherwise, it would impact my selection of topics to work about. But before knowing all those things, Torange is also a song that is sang by that singer. It came, I think the first time that I listened to it, it came before that, was 15 years ago. And then around 12, 13 years ago, in the happenings after Iran presidential elections and all those things that happened after that. We were listening to this song a lot. I don't know, I can't remember why, but we all were listening to this song a lot. And then that passed, and some years later, something else happened in my personal life, and I came back and started listening to this song a lot. And a few years later, when I was here, the singer's mom passed away a few hours before he performed in a it was a very a crowded concert that he had that night. And the way that he sang this song in that concert was very impressive for all of us. All of us who lived outside of Iran, who were not be able to go back and visit their families, or their families, because of the travel ban, were not be able to travel here and visit them. Like all those distance, all those limits and restrictions and all those bans was something that made that performance and that song unique. So the fact that I've been listening, I mean, it was not only me, it's a collective memory that we have towards this song. The fact that this poetry, this song have changed our meanings throughout time, just based on what people would think and feel when they listen to this song, was the fact that made me to make an art about that. So this is actually like a tribute to a collective memory that I have with a generation that felt the same thing the same time, and they're still feeling the same thing. So yeah, it made me to make this work.
That's amazing. That collective memory is so powerful, and to find something to continue to connect those different parts of that collective is, I admire your choice to do that. So I am curious about, the making process for this piece. So you decided you were going to dedicate part of your project to this collective memory. Then is this on cloth? Like, what are these dyes or paints, or like, how did this come to be physically, literally?
So we talked about like many layers of one piece of art that people would like think about and add to that meaning or discover a new meaning in that. So inspired by that, this work is also happened in the same way. I say like happened because some of this thing really happened, and some of the thing was things that I made. So I used to work on the floor, and also I would have like a piece of plastic sheet on the floor, and then 1 or 2 layers of a canvas on top of that. And then I would put the last layer of canvas was the one that I was working on. So 2 other layers underneath of that would absorb all these extra pigments and all the moisture and all the time and process that I put on the other work. So these like underneath canvases were going to be the surface for the next work. So the So that means in this series, at least, I've never started from a blank surface. So there was always some marks and some remains from the other works. So all those like vague pattern that you can see came from other pieces that I had. And I really like to keep the history of my work in each other. So, and then this work is also inspired by Iranian rock design. You can tell by the rectangular parts and use of the margin and all those things. And also I used some found fabric that I brought from Iran, something that has some actually objects that they had their own history with them because they've been used before. And I glue them on top of this surface, and I worked on this. So the process of working is that I usually soak the whole thing in paint and I let it dry for a day or two. And then the next day I come and like soak it with another layer of paint and color and let it dry again and again. So letting it dry before adding the next layer keeps a physical layer here actually, because paints won't mix the same time, then they would just build up on top of each other to create a new a color. And so like many layers, like many physical layers that would create an illusion of space, illusion of three-dimensional space. And the last thing in this work was some, it's not actually like obvious in this picture, but there are some cuts on the body of the fabric. So those cuts happened when I was like listening to that performance that we talked about, and I was like so sad and thinking about what if the same thing happens for any of us, what would we do, and like all those like pressures and sorrow that I was experiencing that moment made me think about painting as the body of the artist, and how there are like some psychological wounds on our like not body but our own soul, on our soul, that is not like obvious from the outside, but it can be obvious on the body of the painting as an alternative way of representing body of the artist. And then I turned it back. I made a red color, which was really close to a fresh blood. And I painted from the back. So when I painted from the back, some like part of the paint would ooze from those like cuts and come out, at the same time that some of it would still stay behind. And then when you turn it back, you just can see some cuts with some red colors. And yeah, it was like many layers and many days of working on this one. So
for real. Oh, but it's so cool how it is like it's like its own living, breathing thing. It has life, it has memories, it has depth. I think that understanding how those, it's important to let that paint like dry to add the next layer was something that I had never thought of. That's really interesting. So thank you for sharing the story of this piece and where your mind was at. This is from the same collection, correct? Misordered Story. So I would love to learn a little bit more about this one.
So this is a good time to talk about this one because we talked about many things that led me to make this work. So we talked about a literature, we talked about artist body in the space, and we also talked about calligraphy and handwriting, and also how my experiences like has changed. I mean, how I used to feel about where I am and what I say, or all those things has changed when we talked about like humor and translation and all those things. Mm-hmm. So this work was about how I feel about all those things and how I feel that I had a story and I knew what I'm doing, what I'm saying, and people would know because it was like a book that has a beginning and an end, and you can just read and everything makes sense. But now, after like experiencing this many like differences and also similarities, I felt that after a while, I myself even don't understand what's happening, or I can't make sense of things that is happening around me. And then I felt like my story, I mean, it's like you give a book to a kid and then they start to ripping it and like tearing pages apart, and then you just rearrange the book without paying attention what was the order, and the new story doesn't make sense. So this is a new story, and that's why it is called Misordered Story. It is a story that it's not based on the order that it makes sense. So it even doesn't make sense. So how I made this was exactly the way that I felt about this story. So it is a piece of a work. I think it's like more than 10 by 12 feet. It was a unit piece of canvas. First, I started painting on that with the same process and with the same technique that we talked about. And then I tear it into strips and then just misorder them. And I kind of stitch them together. And for the installation, I wanted it to kind of act like I wanted the art piece to act by itself without direct control of the author, that is me, the artist. So I wanted to see how natural forces impact the work. For example, gravity. For example, the tension between threads and all those things. I controlled some part of that, but intentionally let some part of it to work by itself. So the gravity and the tension and all those things created these like wavy shapes, created this experience. So this work is aware of its presence in the space. And when you are closer to it, it seems that it is embracing the human body because of this scale. And also you can experience the tension and all those things in person. Yeah.
That's so powerful. I love how that element of like letting it feel the gravity and stuff just affirms that it is in a space, and that space and it are interacting. That's so cool. And I think like to me, when I look at it, I'm encouraged because ultimately, yes, it's a misordered story, but it's its own beautiful like thing and new creation. And it reminds me, I spoke with someone who was an artist and a scientist, and they did this thing in a museum where instead of putting the birds with the birds and the things with four legs with the things with four legs, they put everything together by color and they separated it out across this color spectrum. And you wouldn't maybe traditionally classify things in that way, but it helps you to see new connections, get new ideas from it. And I feel like with the misordered story too, like, A to Z is the traditional way to make sense of things. Chronologically is the traditional way to make that sense of things. But so cool when you let yourself kind of mix up what's happened, because ultimately we often don't know what's going on anyways, like you said. So that's very awesome how your work does that. This is cool because it's outside. So Hope the Wind Rises. Is this at Mount Sequoia too?
Yeah, and the building behind the work is where my studio is.
That's so cool.
I'm in that building now, so.
Oh my gosh, small world. So this is this is not part of your thesis work, or is this as well? Okay, so I would love to hear more about this project.
So it happened during pandemic, and it has been a while that we would work, and all our exhibition plans, like everything kept getting canceled and canceled. So I remember I was like talking with my friends about the same thing. And I have a friend who is curator, and she and a co-curator together have a platform, like a curatorial platform that works with like people around the world. So they are based in UK, and we were talking about all these things, and they were curating a series of online and on-site exhibitions in around the world. So in this series of work, we would we would experience how we can still make art and show art to people outside of its traditional space, and like venues like exhibitions, and just interact with audiences, because we really couldn't be inside. So I participated, and like I connected with them. I just took my works, like those that can be shown outside, and installed them between trees. And we had a pop-up, like I think it was like 5 hours exhibition. I installed everything in the morning and afternoon until evening. We had the exhibition, and like my friends came and saw the work, and people who've seen the exhibition like poster in Facebook and social media also stopped by and saw this work. And we would document all these like exhibition material with a video. We would have a Instagram live for people around the world who were not there, and also with like video and photo documentation. We kept all these things together. It was happening at the same week around the world. Those artists who were in the UK gathered around in, I think it was, I can't remember the park's name, but it was a park in London. They took their work there, and they had like a picnic and showed their work. But we who were not in UK, I mean, had our own work around ourselves. So I had it here in Mount Sequoia. We had people joining from Tehran, from Istanbul, and from a lot of different cities in the world. So
Such an important thing during this whole 2020 and 2021 ongoingly, to find new ways to connect and share an experience around the world meant a lot. Maybe I'm sure to be part of it as a maker, but also for anyone who got to experience it. I think it gave it was one of those important ways to have some hope in that time. And so I love the title too, Hope the Wind Rises. Was that in part because you were going to be outside with it, or is this from literature that meant something to you too?
So it's again two-sided. One side is that these works were going to be installed outside and talking about all the natural forces and things that are out of author's direct control. Wind can be something that wind could work with these things very well. So I had experience putting these works outside, and when wind would rise, it would create a really different experience of these works. Also, there is a animation that I really like. It's actually anime by Miyazaki, and it is called The Wind Rises. So I wanted to have some kind of a reference to that one as well. So
that's awesome. And is there a sort of net on this, or the red part of the work that is coming off of the main canvas? What's going on there?
So this work is one of the series that was about architectural pieces. And this is supposed to be something like a window. So the background is the landscape outside of the window, and those net shaped thing that I wove with pieces of canvas are actually the window itself. So it is also about the inside and outside, and it is about the shallow space and shallow distance between two things. And it is also about how we experience space. And yeah.
I love that. I'm so glad we got to talk about that part of this work too. I can totally see it. So I know we spoke about glitched home a little bit, but maybe what we could talk more about is, I guess, how it came about that you were to put this together while people were going through the museum. You talked a little bit about those conversations, so maybe we can talk about that more, or just anything else that you'd like to share about this that you haven't.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of references that are used in this work, but I'm just going to talk about the original idea of the work. So this is a work that is made by more than 2,500 pieces of canvas, and they are in shape of a rectangle. So the rectangle actually, they are actually square. So these squares are representing pixels, and it is about my experience of being in contact with my family and my beloved ones through digital devices in the past few years that I haven't been able to be in touch with them, be in contact with them in person. So, and I technically made a home interior with pixels, but a tactile pixels. And the piece that you can see in the center is a piece that is inspired by Persian rock. And I transferred photos that I've been sending back and forth with my family, with my friends, and it was on my social media. And I transferred them on canvas and made this rock piece with them. And yeah, the whole project took around 5 months. Yeah. We planned to finish one wall and install it before the opening of the exhibition. So people would have some idea what's going to happen here. And then Crystal Bridges curatorial team was looking for a site-specific installation that can be done and finished on site before the eyes of viewers. So I've been present there for around 6 weeks and finishing the work on site and like interact with people, answer their questions, talk with them and all those things.
Such a unique opportunity. And for me as well, this is a photo I took when I got to see it. It was really special. And just so impressed by how it came together. Was this a work that you created as a result of this call of Crystal Bridges to contribute something to them, or had you already had the idea for the glitched home and you were going to put it somewhere else? Like, what was that timeline like?
I had the idea. I mean, when I made that Misordered Story piece for my thesis, I was always looking for an opportunity to be able to fill the whole space with fabric. So, and I've been like writing proposals and reaching out to different places who had like some place and fund that I could use. So I've been doing that, but so like as a side note, this kind of work cannot be done independently. First, you need to have a space to show it there. Also, it needs a lot of like monetary support. So I was lucky that I got contacted by Crystal Bridges curatorial team. Lauren specifically contacted me and said, hey, I've seen your work in a gallery in downtown Bentonville, and also I presented my work for a public project that I did for Bentonville Public Library in the Bentonville Public Art Committee. It was a Zoom call and Lauren was one of the persons there. So she saw my work in different places and then she contacted me and said, for this specific exhibition, we are looking for a regional artist to make a site-specific installation and also be able to work itself be in a way that can be done in the gallery so people can see what's behind the scene of making this kind of artwork. So yeah, this work is made specifically for the Crystal Bridges and by the support of the Crystal Bridges. And without that, I was not able to realize this project, which was actually one of my dream projects to make. So,
wow. So in that, I hear, you know, the importance of being ready with your ideas and also with making like your presence known in the art community where you are is something that matters for creators in order for these opportunities to share their work to come about. Do you have any you know, like wisdom you might share with someone who is a maker or a creator or an artist about making sure that like people know that they are there and that they are willing and eager to do the work?
Yeah, the first thing that I would say is that work and work and work and don't think what would happen afterwards. Because I worked on this proposal when it was in the middle of a pandemic and I didn't know what I'm going to do. And also I'm an international artist here. I wasn't sure even if I will be able to stay in the States or I have to leave and go somewhere else. So all these things didn't stop me to keep working. It was not easy all the time because there are a lot of different forces around us. But I would make sure that at the end of the day, I'm still making art. The other thing is that I kept applying for open calls and grants and everything that was around us. I didn't get many of them. And this work, I mean, the project that I talked, that we done with the Bentonville Public Library, that I really enjoyed doing that, and like working with their group in public library actually came from a application that I submitted for an opportunity and I got rejected. But someone in the committee has seen and read my proposal and they were like, yeah, public library is looking for a project similar to it. And I'm going to connect you guys and see if it works. And they connected us and it worked. So even if I didn't get the first one, I could still work around here. And that rejected proposal indirectly connected me to this project here. So just keep working and try to use any opportunity that is around yourself and just apply for everything. In worst case scenario, you get a reject for the first time, but maybe for the second time, you won't get rejected because the committee there already know your work. I mean, just the opportunity to show your work to selection committee is not a opportunity that you want to overlook. And like take everything seriously. Like even if you're working for yourself, I don't say that take everything seriously in a way that you limit your creativity, but take everything seriously and be responsible about every decision that you make in your studio, because you don't know what happens. And if you are serious enough in your work, I mean, as serious and committed as you are in your work, you get opportunities that are suitable for your like project. So that means if you are doing something in a good quality, the chance that you get good quality opportunities is more than you get like bad qualities. You still get those things too, but at least you are ready for those better ones.
Yeah. I intern in behavioral health right now. And so many people, you know, myself included, sometimes we're anxious. We're worried about, you know, what's the worst thing that's going to happen. And we believe that's the worst thing's going to happen. But so often like the helpful thing is actually to remember, like, what really is the worst that happens here? Like if I submit this proposal and it doesn't get accepted, like the worst that happened is that I got to do some work to help me know better who I am as an artist and what I believe in and what I want to do. And it was pre-work for this next thing, or it introduces me to someone else. And so to remember that it's worth putting the time, and even if you don't know what the outcome will be, is very encouraging and great. So I am thankful that you share that wisdom. And you are you're an artist and you're also a professor at the U of A, right? You're teaching 4 classes, which is more classes than I'm taking. So I don't know how you're doing it. That's amazing. And I'm curious about what teaching does for you as an artist, and also what are your goals in teaching, you know, for your students?
So as an artist, it makes me keep researching and learning. So I think that's the most important thing. And also I mean, I get to see a lot of new works and new energy in class that inspires me. I mean, sometimes my students make some work that really surprises me, and I'm like, you guys are the best. So how could you do that? And it inspires me to come to the studio and even work more. Yeah, I think the inspiration and the opportunity and the force to keep reading, researching, studying, and keep making yourself better is the most important thing for me. And I mean, yeah, I'm teaching 3 foundation classes that are like 8 weeks classes. So they are basically 1.5. And I'm teaching like one full semester class, which is drawing now. So
amazing. Yeah. So many different lanes to keep learning in and interacting with students. And there's a phrase that you used on maybe on your website or your mission, which I thought was really beautiful. I wanted to make sure we talked about it. You said to use, art to show that regardless of nationality, religion, or gender, there are commonalities for all individuals. I wanted to make sure that we got a chance to hear from you, like what that means and why that matters.
I think it came from my experience of living here and moving from a country which is a little bit unknown for people here. Even if they know something, it is based on media, and I don't trust media. So yeah, the first year that I was here, I mean, my first reaction was to see differences. And the second year, what I was paying more attention to, and both those things happened like unconsciously. It was not something like I consciously pay attention to this or that. In the second year, I found myself recognizing more familiarities between people than differences. So, and it also led me to make art in a way that it is approachable by people. By people, I mean just people. It doesn't matter if we are sharing the same background or same experiences or anything same. There are still things that we can understand from each other just because we are all human beings. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for explaining it. So as we're wrapping up, Ziba, I would like to ask you what I tend to close with, which is what you would like people to leave knowing about you and your work. And secondly, what you're looking forward to right now. And that can be as little as a cup of tea later and as big as, some next project.
Yeah. So that question was the one that before this chat, I told you that I'm still thinking about, and I'm not sure what it is. I think just let's refer to the last thing that we talked about together, and it was about like people being people and more commonalities than differences. So let's just see each other, or if you guys are hearing me now, please look at more familiarities and commonalities between each other than just differences. Yeah, and if there is differences, we can just respect each other's differences. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you. I think that's a perfect way to describe it. And what are you looking forward to right now?
I don't know if you heard that or not. My grandma tried to call me 3 times in last 5 minutes. And I think I'm going to call her now.
That is a great thing to look forward to. No better way to end the week and enter a new one than with a sweet talk with one's grandma. So I hope that is, I know that will be a wonderful conversation. And I thank you so much, Ziba, for speaking with me today. I'm so inspired by the work you're doing here and the ways that you're helping us recognize that we all have some stuff in common that can get us excited to also know the things that we don't share in common, which is what makes life so interesting and beautiful and hopeful. So thank you, Ziba.
Yeah, thank you, Cara, for inviting me for these sessions. I mean, I really enjoyed questions that you designed, and I really enjoyed the flow of the conversation. Everything looked so natural to me. So, and yeah, I'm so happy to be a part of this series, because I know what you are looking for from these things are valuable for our community. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ziba.